everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're going to button up the bottom end of our 351 Windsor. In the last video we got the crankshaft, the camshaft, the timing set, and the front end all buttoned up. Today we got to get our rings, get them fitted to the bores, get them installed on the pistons, and drop the pistons and rods into the block one by one. So we got a set of sealed power rings, you can see there, 30, so that means that there's supposed to be a set of 30 over rings in this box. We'll find out. You see they come in 4. These are top groove, you can see, so you can see there, they're all marked. It's your top compression ring. There's your second compression ring. That's your expanders. And those are your oil rings. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to open these packages one by one, and we're going to go around and check the end gaps. The end gaps on your rings are very important. If the end gaps are too big, you'll lose compression. If your end gaps are too small, when things warm up, they'll actually close up tight together and lock up your motor. We don't want that, do we? So, here we have them. They should have a dot or some kind of mark on them to denote top. If they don't, they can go either way. Let's see here. What do we see? There's absolutely nothing on these rings, so these rings can go either way. They do not have a top and bottom. So you find something that's just a little smaller than your cylinder. This is a piece of 4-inch pipe, and these, because they're overboard, are 4 inches and 30 thousandths. So you get your ring in, and you just use this to push it to make sure it's in there square. Now we're going to check that gap right there. First we have to see what the manual says the gap should even be. The specification in the manual calls for a minimum of 10 thousandths, and they would like to see it no more than 20. So there, our 10 goes in easily. Let's see the 20. The 20, it'll start in, but it won't go right in. So we're good there. So we'll put this. We'll put this back in our little pile for number 1 cylinder. There. And we'll go through and do the top compression ring for the other 7. And then we'll start on the second. The rings for the second groove are different. You can see they're marked top, unlike the bottom ones. And what's different about them is this little chamfer on the, it's hard to see, but they've got a little chamfer on the bottom side. So we'll measure them the same way. It's the same clearance specification as the top ones. These are the expanders for the oil rings. We don't really have a specification for them. So we'll just set them off to the side until we need them. But what we do need to check is the actual oil rings themselves. Now these will be the same as the other ones. They'll say top or they'll say nothing. There's nothing on that side and there's nothing on that side. So these go either way, but we still need to check the gap. The specification in the manual for these is 15 to 55. 55 is a lot. We're not even going to check that, but we are going to check and make sure we've got our 15. And the oil rings, there's 2 per cylinder, so we'll have to check them one at a time. And this is kind of tedious, but you have to check them because, yeah, we're good there. You have to check them all because you can get one rogue ring that's totally wrong in the package, right? It happens. Alrighty, we've got a piston in the vise here. I grab them by the beam of the rod. so that the piston just has a little bit of wiggle room. So now we're going to get the old rings off. And the expanders, we can't use our trick little tool. The expand or the oil rings, they just kind of, you twist them off. Where's the bottom one? Where's the gap? There we go. And the bottom one is going to want to bring the expander with it. It gets a little aggravating, but there we go. And out comes the expander. Now we got to clean up the piston. We want to clean up the crown. We want to clean up the sides here. And we got to clean up the ring grooves. So you can use a variety of tools for that. I've got just an old-fashioned scraper here to get the carbon off the top. You can use, probably if you soak these in a bit of water, that would help loosen up the carbon. But this stuff isn't too bad. It's coming off pretty easily. And you're getting down in right down in the bottoms of these valve reliefs. Get any of that stuff off of there. I mean, it was running with carbon in it, and it's going to get carbon in it again. We just want to get any of this kind of loose, flaky crap off. Get the old wire brush. Okay, you can blow a little air on it. You can use carburetor. Now, we want to clean the grooves. So, you could grab yourself one of the old piston rings. A lot of guys will just like to do that. Grab an old ring and break it off and kind of sharpen a little point on it. And you can work your way around with that and clean it out. You can also get, these were pretty popular tools back in the day, a ring groove cleaner. And you find the one that's the little... I think there's the one we need. No, this one doesn't even have one narrow enough. Or is it that one? No. Let's try another one. What we got here? Let's try this one. Yeah, that one goes in there. So that one goes in there. And then it's got this little set screw to set the depth, so you don't gouge a bunch out of the back of the ring groove. And you just tighten this up like this. Quite frankly, it's probably easier just to use a broken piston ring. But anyway, you get the idea. You let that bottom out and then just touch it a little bit. There we go. And then you just work it around. I buy these things at swap meets and there we go. That cleans them out. Then we can do the second groove. It's got it. This bloody ratchet mechanism on it is useless. The thing's probably old and wore out, you know. There we go. She's cutting now. You can feel it cutting the carbon out. Got a little aluminum too. Probably best off just to use a broken ring. Well, I've had these things kicking around here for years. We would be remiss if we didn't at least try it. Got this too you can use. Try a little carburetor cleaner. Here we go. Oh, carburetor cleaner. This is designed to break up carbon and stuff. let that sit on there for a minute. On the sides of it here. Oh, look how that came out. Beautiful. Like shiny, brand new. And there you go. That's the broken ring method of cleaning it. It's probably actually better. And this in behind the oil rings, you don't usually find too much trouble in there because it's full of oil and it kind of keeps itself clean because of the detergent. So we'll just give this a little blow dry. Okay, now we can put the rings on. So we're going to start with an oil ring expander. And it's best to do them all the same. So I've got the notch, the front of the engine pointing toward me. So we want, when the oil ring goes in, we want the ends of it here to butt against each other like that. And they want it right above the wrist pin. So we just put it on like that. There. And there's our end. You got to be careful you don't get it overlapped like that. It's got to be just butted together, just like that. And then we grab an oil ring, the actual ring, and they want the gaps on these arranged so that they're 90 degrees from this. So there'll be one over here and one over here. So we're going to do the top one first. And you work that over. And it just snaps in. And once you got the top one in, you have to make sure that your expander is still butted together like that. Good. Now, oh, sorry for the reach. We're going to get our lower oil ring. And it's going to go under there. And we're just going to work that around like so. And it's going to go in. And you can see there. So you should be able to move it all the way around like that. That's how you know it's good. Okay? Now, put this thing back up here. So now we're on to the compression rings. And number 2 is going to go on first. And you'll remember, it was marked top. So, we use this piston ring tool. Yeah, I put millions of them on with my 2 thumbs, but right in the instructions it says, do not put it on with your 2 thumbs, use the special tool. Well, we got one, so let's use it. It does make nice short work of it. There we go. And the top compression ring has no markings of any sort on it, so it can go on any which way. There. And just me, I like these rings to be the gaps 180 degrees apart and kind of not really over the gaps on the oil rings, right? So that's pretty good just like that. So we'll do the rest of them just like that. Well, once you're done, make sure these rings float like they ought to be able to move. No tight spots. This is good. Now we can go ahead and do the rest of them, and then we can start putting them in. There's a couple of other checks that could be done. We could check the piston to bore clearance. If this was a new build and we were putting pistons we didn't know in new holes, right? But we know all 8 of these pistons were in those very 8 holes going up and down happily for a while. So we skipped that step. Also, you can check the gap, the actual gap between the ring this way, between the ring and the grooves on the piston. We're not going to do that because we're not putting new pistons in it. Even if they were a tiny bit loose, they're staying. Now we can start putting pistons in. You'll see here they've got a notch which orients them to the front. That's for a couple of reasons. Number one, the wrist pin is offset a tiny little bit. It's biased this way a little bit. And that controls piston slap when the engine is cold and helps with wear on the thrust side of the piston. Another and more important reason, you'll see it's hard to see, but the shell is not centered in the rod. It's offset to the back. That's because on a V engine, a V6 or a V8, you've got 2 rods per throw on the crank. And this side, they have to offset the bearing that way a little bit because there's a radius. There's a radius where the pin joins the throw. So we need to have a little space there for the radius on the crankshaft. If you put this in backwards, this sharp edge of the bearing is going to lock against the radius and ruin your day. So anyway, we're going to be using our ring compressor to put these in, and some oil. So first we're going to take the cap off and leave it here. And I'll see you at the bench. So we're going to use our paintbrush here, our oily paintbrush, and we're just going to paint a bunch of oil, make sure it gets down into these rings. Just like that, that's good. We're going to put a little bit on the shell, and we can get some on the wrist pin. Now we're going to let that soak. While we go over, I'll be back. I'm going to smear oil all over the cylinder wall and the throw on the crankshaft. Now we got our ring compressor, and you can tell the bottom because it's got these little dings in it. That's what sits on top of the deck. So you push the piston down through it, but the ring compressor doesn't go into the bore with your piston. All right. So over it goes. Wow, we really got to open this up. There. That should be good, you would think. Yeah. Then we tighten her up. And you see here we've left the skirt. That's kind of how you lead it in to the engine. Okay, so we've also got a pair of these little booties to make sure that the rod bolts don't ding the crankshaft as they go by. So we get it in there. We've got our notch pointing forward. Just tap her down in, and there she is. Then send her home. Got a little oil on the bearing. We'll get the cap on. And from under here, how you match it up, I could see the number stamped in the rod here. So the number is stamped on the same side of the cap. So we just get the cap up there. Get the one nut started on. It's a little tricky because it's up in between the counterweights because I've got that top dead center. And then once we've got all 8 of them in, we'll flip it over and torque them all. Now that we've got these 2 in, we'll turn the crankshaft so that these 2 pins are in the right place to put in the next 2. And also to make sure that it still turns nice. Alrighty, now we got all 4 on this side in. We'll just roll her around a little bit. Make sure she's still turning nice. Yeah, we're good. You can see though how smogged up this engine is. Look at how far down the holes the pistons sit. That is not good for performance. But what are you going to do? That's what we all have to live with. Well, you don't have to live with it. You could send this block to the machine shop and have it zero decked, right? But we're not doing that. Alrighty, we got all 8 of them in. Now we can flip her up and we'll torque them all. I gotta look up what the torque is on these things. I think it was 40. Torque specification, connecting rod nut, 40 to 45. We'll do them at 45, just to make sure. So we can do them 1 throw at a time. There, we'll start at the back here. Okay, torque then checked. Now onto the next 2. It'll be these ones that come around next. Now we're going to have a go at the oil pump. We can see here by the number on it, M83. This is a Melling oil pump that was put in it when the engine was rebuilt. So what we're going to do is, we've got some gaskets to clean off here. We're going to get that done. And then we're going to pop the cover off and make sure everything looks good inside. Oh. Okay, let's get lid off this. Oh. It just, because it's inside the engine, it relies on the precision ground surfaces to seal it. And if any little bit wicks out, it's not that big a deal. So you can see here, look at that. See how that's chewed up? That's going to cost us oil pressure. That is not good. If I had access to a surface grinder, I could repair that. But I don't have access to a surface grinder. I got to look around here, see if I've got another old oil pump that we could steal the cover for. There's not really much I could do about the gears, but if we can at least get a good cover back on it, that'll help. We're allowed a maximum of 13 thou between the outer surface of the rotor and the body, and I've got it locked up at about 5 or 5.5, so that's good. We just have to see if we can find a cover. Here's an old pump from an old 302 I found in the junk bin. Let's pull the cover off and see what it looks like. So the cover from our junk oil pump is a lot better than our cover. So we'll clean this one up and use it. You can see here the difference between a 302 oil pump and a 351 oil pump. That's how much more oil they figure they need to feed those great big mains. And on top of that, it even uses a larger drive shaft than the 302. See? Pretty interesting, eh? Now that we've got a decent cover, we can check the end clearance. So the manual says maximum 4/1000ths of an inch. So we'll drop our rotor in there. And I've got here 3 1/4. And we'll pop our cover on there. And this should be draggy or locked. And it's, yeah, it's pretty much stuck. Now we can do the same thing with the rotor. Yeah, and it locks up too at 4/1000. So we're good there. Aside from that cover being kind of chewed up and this having a little wear on it, we're all right. I touched this a little bit with some fine emery to take off any high spots. Same with the end of the drive gear, and we should be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this thing now. When you're mucking around with oil pumps, just kind of pack them up with grease. That gives them a fighting chance to have some kind of prime once they start up. And make sure it's lubricated when it first starts up so we don't have any more trouble like we just had. You can even go ahead and pack these cavities with grease here. And that'll just help it get kind of started. You can use Vaseline too. Doesn't really matter. Get a good blob of it in there. There we go. There. That will get this thing going when we first start our engine. And we're going to actually pre-prime it. We can run the oil pump drive shaft with a drill and get the oil pressure built up before we actually start it. And that'll make 100% sure she gets going. Now we can install our oil pump drive. It goes down in that hole down there. And you can see here it's got that little clip on the end. That is very important. If it doesn't have the clip on the end of it, you'll find out the hard way like I did one time when you pull your distributor out and the little drive shaft comes out a little way with it and then falls down. And then you have to take the oil pan off to go find it. Not a fun day. So once we got the drive shaft in there, we could lower the oil pump onto it and install it with a new gasket and torque the bolts to 30 foot-pounds. Not a lot of clearance there around that counterweight, but there's clearance. Now we can go ahead and put the pickup screen on. Here's our new pickup screen, and never trust anything. We'll make sure we give this a good blowout to be sure there's no junk in it. We put a new gasket on, and I always put some kind of sealer on this because this is absolutely critical. If that leaks in the least bit, it will suck air and your engine will not last. Now we have to check our oil pickup clearance. You'll notice when we install the pickup, there's a little give in the bolts. So we're going to make sure we've got it like that. So it's as deep as it can be. And then we're going to measure it. There's lots of ways you can measure it. Some guys will put like a blob of Play-Doh or something on there and put the pan on. This ain't a race car. We're just going to do this old school. So what we're shooting for here is about 1/8 of an inch. So we lay a straight edge across there and get the old portable yardstick here. And we've got 7 5/8. What is it on this side? 7 3/4 on this side. Now we'll use this same straight edge and measure the depth of our oil pan where that pickup sits and find that we've got 7 3/4 exactly. So that's too low. We want to get it off the bottom of the pan a little bit. but not too far. So we're going to loosen our bolts here. Sorry, I forgot to move the camera. And just kind of turn this thing a little bit down. Take it put it about halfway in its range of motion. There. Okay. Now let's measure this thing again, see what we got. Can you see it there? Yeah, okay. There, that's better. Let's see here, people. What do we got now? 7 5/8. 7 3/4. I didn't move it at all. Let's try again. Try it there. Seven and a half. Yeah, it's 7 5/8 on that side. Now I'll measure our tank again. Now we've got 7 3/4. So that should be pretty good. We've got 1/8 of an inch over on this side. We'll put the gasket in. It'll scrunch down a bit, but not that much, and that'll have us in good order. Now we can put the oil pan on, but we have a problem. It seems that my gasket set from the Land of Almost Fits, when they made it, they forgot to put in a little parts kit that had all the neoprene bits, the end seals for the intake manifold, the end seals for the oil pan, the valve seals. And unfortunately, I bought it so long ago, by the time I opened it, of course, not eligible for return. Unbelievable. So anyway, thankfully, we had some kicking around because my friend Peter that I went to high school with, his dad, Carl, he passed away a few years ago. He was a real Ford guy, and he had a bunch of old Ford stuff in his garage, and in a box of old gaskets I got from there, I found some end seals. So we're okay. We'll just use those. Thanks, Carl. Okay, we've got our side rail gaskets kind of stuck down. The ends are in, and I put just a little gob of sealant where the cork and the end meets, and we'll just let that skin up for a little bit before we drop the oil pan down. Then we'll just put all the bolts in, go around, torque them up, and that will be that done. Well, that'll do it. These bolts, I don't really follow the torque recommendation. It's a cork gasket. Sometimes if you get going, they'll start squeezing out, like see here. So I take them down by hand just until I just see it starting to come out like that, and then I stop. We've seen the silicone come squirting out on the four corners. That means it's pushed it down in. That should be sealed nicely. So I think we've got this thing licked. So we're all set. Our short block is together. I guess now I'm going to cover it up and we'll start working on the cylinder heads so we can get them on. And then we can, dress it out, right? Get all the accessories and little bits and pieces on it. And, yeah, looking good. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Claremont Classic Garage. I hope you'll come back and see us again. And until then, I'm Kevin saying so long for now.